Hello and welcome. My name is Amy. I'm the owner and the creator of Make a Memory Bear. And one of the number one questions I get is, what is the difference between your bears? So I thought, you know what? I've never made an introduction video explaining every pattern that's in my shop. And since I get that question a lot, I figured I'd start with introducing all the different bears that I have, and then I'm going to show you all of the patterns that I have just so you can see size comparison. I'll explain some of the differences, and maybe it'll make your choice of which pattern you want to create a little bit easier. First, we'll start with the 4 bears. Here we have Mamie, Chipper, Brookie, and Noelle. Okay, so we're going to start with Chipper, actually. Chipper Bear is the very first pattern that I ever made, and it's because in 2017, my sister-in-law gave me a garbage bag full of her grandmother's clothing after she passed away, and she asked me to make whatever I could out of her stuff, out of her clothes. So I made a little quilt, I made a little pillow, and then I was like, you know what? I want to make one of those memory bears. So I just went to Walmart, I bought a pattern, and it was entirely too complicated for me because I'd never made a stuffed animal before and I was not used to following patterns in any way. I have no training. So then I went to Etsy and I bought some patterns that way. Again, they were super complicated and not very good instructions for me as a brand new beginner. So I began taking all of these different bits and pieces and I started thinking like, this could be so much easier. And I ended up drafting my very own pattern just with pencil and paper. And this is ultimately what I came up with, which is Chipper Bear. And then in addition to that, I was like, I'm going to make a video so that people can see step by step how to do this. Now, back in 2017, nobody was doing video tutorials. So that was kind of a brand new idea and it really went off with a bang. People loved it. So, okay, let me get back to the point. All right, here's Chipper Bear. This is the absolute easiest pattern in my entire collection. It is designed specifically for beginners. It's a total of 6 pattern pieces. So you've got the head, the body, the arms, and the legs. And the ears. I couldn't remember what the other thing was. And the ears. Okay. It's about 14 inches tall when it's sitting and about 18 inches long if you measure from the very top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Now this, like I said, is the easiest pattern. It's just this little rounded head, these little floppy arms and legs. There's no tail or anything on the back. But I do believe it's one of the cutest bears that I have too. I just love Chipper Bears so much, so much, so much. Okay, so this is absolutely the easiest for brand new beginners. And then the second pattern that I ever made 1 year later was Mamie Bear because I was getting some feedback from people like they wanted more of a snout on Chipper. And you see he's just kind of like a little round bowling ball head. And so then I started experimenting with trying to make more of a snout like Mamie Bear has. And I didn't want it just to be the exact same pattern, just with a different head. So I constructed different arms, different legs, and this one ended up being a total of 9 pattern pieces. I will still say this is for maybe advanced beginners. There's maybe a couple of complicated parts, like sewing on this little centerpiece of the face is a little bit tricky. Sewing on the soles of the feet is a little bit tricky, but you can totally do it, even if you are a beginner, in my opinion, especially with the video tutorial showing you some tips and tricks along the way. So the main differences between these two, this is 6 pattern pieces, this is 9 pattern pieces. So it has the gusset down the center of the face, it has the soles on the bottom of the feet, and then it also has a tail. So those are some of the extra pieces that it has. It still has a nice little round fat body and floppy little arms and legs, cute little ears, just slightly more complicated than Chipper, but it too is about 14 inches tall when it's in a seated position and about 18 inches from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. Now, next is Brookie Bear. And Brookie Bear is in a permanent kind of seated position like this. So the legs don't flop down, they kind of flop back and forth, but it's always staying in this seated position. And this one, again, I think is probably, if you have a little bit of sewing experience, you could do this one. Again, it's a little bit complicated sewing this little snout piece on, but overall it's pretty easy. Now this one measures about 11 inches tall, and like I said, it's always kind of in the seated position, so that's the only measurement I have is 11 inches. It does have this little center snout, and it does have a tail. And it's kind of like a little medium, a smallish to medium sized bear. And then finally, I have my mini bear. I forgot they're back here. I have my mini bear, Noelle. This is the tiniest bear in my collection. And this one is super simple also. This is only 2 pattern pieces. There's one piece for the front that you cut out twice to make the 2 halves of the front. There's one piece for the back that you cut out twice to make the 2 portions of the back. But it's very easy. It's just a little floppy bear that has little arms and legs that flop. It too is in a permanent seated position like this. And this bear is only about 8 inches tall. So the smallest of all of them in my collection. I do want to say that depending on what kind of fabric you use for your bears can change their sizing just a little bit. So for example, these are 2 chipper bears, but this fabric is very stretchy and I did not use any kind of interfacing on it. And this is made from a man's dress shirt, so it was 100% cotton and it was kind of stiff. And so this one is actually truer to what the pattern looks like, kind of like the shape of the head and the size of the body. Whereas this one, because I did not use interfacing, got kind of fat and squishy and his head got real round like a bowling ball. Look at how fat that head is. I love it. But it can make your pattern look a little bit different depending on what kind of fabric you use. Also, I wanted to talk about the eyes because that can make a difference in how your bear ends up looking. Like for example, on this little chipper bear, I used smaller eyes. These are 12 millimeters, I believe. And what I have decided since making this one is that I actually prefer 15 millimeters. These are just slightly bigger. And I just think it changes the appearance of the face just a little bit. So also you can experiment with different noses. Again, if I compare these 2 chipper bears, this was a big old honkin' nose. This was like 27 millimeters, and this is more of a standard 20 millimeters, I believe. That's what I usually put on most of my bears is the 20. But I wanted to experiment and see how it changed the look, and it does change it. So there's ways that you can kind of customize these even beyond just choosing which pattern you want. You can also choose the eyes and the nose, what fabric you use, and it makes each little bear unique. Next, I'll introduce you to the 3 dogs that are in my collection. The biggest one is Jack. Then there's this little mini dog, Peanut. And then there's Dandy the Dachshund. Now next is Jack the dog. Oh my goodness. Jack is probably one of my most favorite patterns. I love this little dog so much. This is another one that I created very early on. It was the 3rd pattern that I created right after Mamie Bear. And he's delightful. I love everything about him. So this one has the long floppy ears. It's got this little face. Let me see. I don't know if you can tell on this one. So it almost looks like he has a little smile because of the seam that goes on the center of the face. I love that so much. He's got these floppy little ears, floppy little arms, floppy little legs, and a big old squishy belly. And then he's got a little tail. Isn't he just so delightful? I love this pattern so much. And another thing about customizing your patterns, like this little dog, I made super soft and squishy, so you can just squeeze the dickens out of it. But sometimes I have started putting weighted pellets in the bottom, and I've been squishing them much firmer than I have in the past. And oh my goodness, that makes them delightful also, because it gives it some heft, you know, a little weight. So that's another way that you can customize your patterns, is you can make them really soft and squishy. You can make them really firm and sturdy. You can add some weighted pellets. So many ways to customize all these little patterns. And here you can see Jack is just slightly smaller than Mamie, my biggest bear. So Jack sits about 13 inches when it's sitting, and it's about 16 inches from the top of the head to the bottom of the foot when you stretch him out. This is little Peanut. So Peanut is a mini dog, and Peanut has the same face as Jack. So again, it's got that cute little smile where the seam is. It's got the same little floppy ears. It's got a little tail, but it has a different body. So it's got these little floppy arms, and it's got these little legs that always stay in a seated position. So if I do a direct side-by-side comparison, you can see Peanut is definitely a little mini dog. He's only about 8 inches from the top of his head to his bottom, whereas Jack, like I said, is 13 inches from its head to its bottom, 16 from the head to the bottom of the feet. So this is significantly tinier, but it does have a similar feel and look. And then we have Dandy the Dachshund, which, oh, isn't this so fun? Look at that, I put a little dog collar on her. Okay, Dandy. Dandy is a long old one. Okay, so from the very tip of this pointy snout to the tip of this tail is almost 2 feet long. It's actually about 23 inches long. Now, like I said, if you use different types of fabric, it might be a little bit bigger or smaller than that, but in general, it's about 23 inches long. It's got this big fat barrel chest, just like a real weenie dog will have, and a skinny little body, a stiff little tail, these cute little legs. Oh my gosh, I just love it so much. This one I put little eyelashes on. That's another way you can customize your patterns, is by putting eyelashes or eyebrows or whiskers or a smile. You can do all sorts of fun things with your little patterns. What do I want to tell you about Dandy? I don't know. This is another one. I like to make them really stiff so it's sturdy. Like a little kid could just tuck it under its arm and be off to play. Or you could make it a little squishier and have it bendy and huggable. But this is Dandy the Dachshund. Cute as she can be. Next up is Beatrice the Bunny. So Beatrice the Bunny. What a little stinking cutie pie. Beatrice is about 12 inches from the top of her head to her bottom. Again, another one that is in a seated permanent position. This one has kind of static legs. I don't know, what do you call this? They don't move. They're not floppy. They're like structured. They're built into the body. And she's got these floppy arms, big, long, floppy ears, sweet little face. This is one that sometimes, on this one I put eyelashes. Oh, yeah, this one, I don't know if you can tell, but I put whiskers. You see those whiskers? I think that's a cute little touch that you can add. So that's Beatrice the Bunny. Next, we'll go over Mikey the Monkey. Okay, now you can't tell me this isn't one of the cutest little monkey patterns you ever did see in your whole life. What kid or person wouldn't want to receive Mikey the Monkey? I love him. I love all my patterns, as you can tell, but my gosh, he's so cute. All right, Mikey the monkey. This is a big old pattern. So it's about 14 inches from top of head to bottom and about 20 inches from top of head to the bottom of the foot. So he's got these long legs. So Mikey the monkey has this adorable little face, these big old ears, floppy little arms that have thumbs. He's got this center piece on his little belly, big, long, floppy legs with little feet that have a thumb. I guess that's called a thumb. I don't know. Or a big toe. I don't know what that is. He's got a long monkey tail and a round, squishy body. He also has this little piece here that helps define his eyes. You can see it on here. Is that not the cutest little monkey ever? I love you. And next I'll show you Chauncey the cat. Okay, get ready for the biggest one. This is Chauncey the cat. And this cat has a big old head. I just was feeling frisky and fun like a cat when I made this pattern, and I wanted it to be totally different. I wanted it to have this big old jumbo head. And so that's exactly what I did. So Chauncey the cat has a big round head, has this center gusset here, has this muzzle on it. Look at this perky little pink nose. Has these little cat ears that stick straight up, floppy arms, floppy little legs, a little cat tail. Okay, and I just double checked the dimensions. This one is about 16 inches when it's sitting, and it is one of those that's kind of a permanent seated position. The legs don't flop down, they flop out to the sides. So about 16 inches from the top of the head to the bottom. So it is a little bit bigger than any other pattern I have when it's seated. So you can kind of see next to Mamie Bear and Mikey the monkey that are both about 14 inches, that Chauncey is a good couple of inches bigger when they're all in their seated positions. Here's little Mo the elephant. Okay, now look at little Mo. This is Mo the elephant. So Mo has these big old flopping ears. It's got this precious little trunk that I will say is one of the hardest pattern pieces to sew out of anything in my collection. This little snout, this little trunk has given me the most trouble. So if you are brand new, I would not start with this pattern because this little trunk might give you some challenges. But if you have any sewing experience, if you're intermediate or above, you can absolutely do this. But I just want to give fair warning that this one does have a little bit of a trickier spot with that trunk. But he's got the floppy arms, the floppy legs. He's got soles on the bottom of his feet. He's got a little tiny floppy elephant tail. And this one is about 12 inches tall from top of head to bottom and about 16 from the top of the head to the bottom of the feet. Isn't he darling? Let me show you compared to Chipper Bear. Hold on. So you can kind of see that Chipper is just a little bit longer, a little bit taller from the top of the head down to the bottom. Just by an inch or two, but they're pretty similar in size. They're both nice, substantial stuffed animals. And my final pattern is Dumplin' the cow. This is the most recent one that I made just about a year ago. So little Dumplin' is my most recent pattern, and it's this little cow. And some unique features. It's got these little horns. It's got these cute little ears that I purposely wanted to kind of stick out. And it's got this little muzzle. This is another one that is not for a brand new beginner, because it is a little bit challenging constructing the snout and sewing it onto the face. I would say this is probably more for intermediate sewers than it is for brand new novices. But it has these little arms that flop to the side, little floppy legs, a little cow tail with a little fringe on the bottom, squishy, little fat belly like I like them. And this one sits about 13 inches tall when it's sitting, about 16 inches long from top of head to the bottom of the foot. This is a pretty substantial little pattern too. All of my patterns are pretty substantial. Like, they make a nice big stuffed animal, unless you're looking for something miniature, and then I would get Noelle, the mini bear, or Peanut, the mini dog, or even Brookie Bear, because she's about 11 inches tall. But even that one I would say is kind of like a mid-sized bear. The rest of these guys are all, I think, pretty large, substantial little stuffed animals, including Dumpling. So there we have it. That's every one of the patterns that are available in my shop. I'm going to have the link below where you can go to either my website, where you can get these patterns in an instant email to you, and you can download it and print it right at home. You can start making one of these in the next 5 minutes if you wanted to. I will also link to my Etsy shop. Some people prefer shopping Etsy, others do not, so I'll make sure both options are available to you. Also, I will link to the playlist that has the tutorials for all of these patterns. You can watch me make every single one from the very first step all the way through the end, plus tips and tricks and ways that you can customize them and make them your own. If you have any ideas for what my next pattern should be, please leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for your support for watching this video. I hope you have a great day.